All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Paradyme Podcast. In this episode, we're going to be finishing up Chapter 3, titled The Religious Mood of Beyond Good and Evil by Friedrich Nietzsche. And in this chapter, he really comes after Christianity and kind of talks about how it's been weaponized in Europe and kind of his gripes with Christianity as a whole. So we're going to jump into aphorism 58, and we'll start by reading it. So go ahead.
All right. Has it been observed to what extent outward idleness or semi-idleness is necessary to a religious life, alike for its favorite microscopic labor of self-examination and for its soft placidity called prayer, the state of perpetual readiness for the coming of God? I mean the idleness with a good conscience, the idleness of olden times and of blood, to which the aristocratic sentiment that work is dishonoring, that it vulgarizes body and soul, is not quite unfamiliar.
Hold on. So he's saying a real religious life and the way that he's perceiving it, it's observed that there's this outward idleness or semi-idleness. So like your car's on and it's idling, but it's not moving forward. So he's saying a real religious life requires that. And okay. And so it's of conscience, it's of olden times, and of blood. That's really all I'm getting here, but go ahead.
Yeah, continuing.
Mm-hmm.
And that consequently, the modern, noisy, time-engrossing, conceited, foolishly proud laboriousness educates and prepares for unbelief more than anything else. Among these, for instance, who are at present living apart from religion in Germany, I find freethinkers of diversified species and origin, but above all, a majority of those in whom laboriousness from generation to generation has dissolved the religious instincts, so that they no longer know what purpose religions serve and only note their existence in the world with a kind of dull astonishment.
Okay. So later on in this part that we read, he talks about how Europe as a whole has been taken over by Christianity and has created these types of men. There's different ways that Christianity is used, that it could be used to exert power. It could be used as like a person, like a regular person, as a way of like solace, right? And then there's poor people who can find pride in their suffering. And what he's saying here is he's seeing at present in Germany, there are free thinkers and they don't necessarily look at religion in that way. They just kind of look at it with a kind of dull astonishment. They don't say it doesn't exist, but they look at it differently than a normal person at Europe during that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
They feel themselves already fully occupied, these good people, be it by their business or by their pleasures, not to mention the fatherland and the newspapers and their family duties. It seems that they have no time whatever left for religion. And above all, it is not obvious to them whether it is a question of a new business or a new pleasure. For it is impossible, they say to themselves, that people should go to church merely to spoil their tempers.
So I think what he's highlighting here is we all, if not ourselves, are this person. But when we go to church, there's people that go because it's what they're supposed to do.
Right.
Rather than people that are actually like going to church to get the message and like treat church like school in a sense.
Right.
There's people that just show up because it's what it's supposed to do, what they're supposed to do. I think that's what he's highlighting here.
I agree. Yeah. They are by no means enemies of religious customs, should certain circumstances, state affairs perhaps, require their participation in such customs. They do what is required, as so many things are done, with a patient and unassuming seriousness, and without much curiosity or discomfort. They live too much apart and outside to feel even the necessity for a for or against in such matters.
Mm-hmm.
See?
Yeah.
Among those indifferent persons may be reckoned nowadays the majority of German Protestants of the middle classes, especially in the great laborious centers of trade and commerce. Also, the majority of labor-
Laborious.
laborious scholars and the entire university personnel, with the exception of the theologians, whose existence and possibility there always gives psychologists new and more subtle puzzles to solve.
So the people that he's talking about are most of the German Protestants of the middle class. So most people that practice Protestantism were all kind of this lukewarm Christian in a sense.
Right.
It's not just them. It's especially in places of their centers of trade and commerce. So I'm sure Amsterdam and at the major cities.
Right.
It's also the majority of scholars and the entire university personnel. So all the people that are like doing research and all the people that are personnel of the university, they're all these kind of like lukewarm Christians, except for the theologians, because it's what they actually do.
On the part of pious or merely church-going people, there is seldom any idea of how much goodwill, one might say arbitrarily will, is now necessary for a German scholar to take the problem of religion seriously. His whole profession, and as I have said, his whole workmanlike laboriousness, to which he is compelled by his modern conscience, inclines him to a lofty and almost charitable serenity as regards religion, with which is occasionally mingled a slight disdain for the uncleanliness of spirit which he takes for granted wherever any one still professes to belong to the church. Laboriousness.
So on the part of pious, so people that actually are religious, or the merely church-going people, the lukewarm Christians, there is seldom any idea of how much goodwill, one might say arbitrarily will. So how much goodwill is necessary for the German person at the time. But I think you might be getting confused a little bit here because, well, at least the way Christianity is nowadays, it's not so much your works, but it's your faith.
Right.
Right. And so what he's saying, it's like they don't know how much goodwill they have to do. So I think there's a little bit of a misconception there, at least in the way Christianity is today.
Well, okay. Yeah. I feel like one of Christianity's like main dogmas that has been present since the beginning is that you're supposed to like help the needy, help the weak.
Yeah.
Right.
And like, I think in the past, that was like one of the main things they did. One, because it was like their virtues, but two, I think you could look at it as that like, it's what brought more people into the fold too, you know?
Yeah.
So, maybe you're just looking at it from like today's perspective, you know, but like maybe then it was more so, you know, because like he references the Roman time a lot. I know for sure, like in that part, Christianity was very much built on its works. I know he's referencing like Germany, like I don't know, what, 1800s, like 1700s, or what is he referencing right now? So
1800s, yeah.
So like I bet you, if you were an upstanding citizen, you were like supposed to like give money to the church or something, or if you didn't, you were like, boo, you know, he's like, whatever, you know?
Then you're one of these lukewarms.
Even if you are lukewarm, I bet you they would still do stuff too. Like Catholics still go to church and put money in the bowl.
Right.
Like, so like, that's what he's talking about. Everyone who like, all the lukewarms still go to church and still do the customs. They're still going money in the bowl. Like they're still doing like, and that's why they're contemplating like how much is good enough, good works for me to do like on my like social hierarchy level as a German citizen. Like if I'm an upstanding person or I'm not, or if I'm pious or if I'm not, like what's enough that we're like, that's enough to get into heaven.
Right.
And like he's saying like only the theologians like actually like even think about like why they're doing the works, not like it's not a transactional thing. The theologians like know that like the thing they're doing is because of like the value within the works, you know?
Yeah.
Like the Germans, he's talking about like his whole workman like laboriousness to which he's compelled to by his modern conscience. Like everything's transactional. So like how much good works does it equal to get into heaven? And like he still does weigh it in his mind. Like it's not out of his mind, but like he thinks about it with like charitable serenity. He's like, yeah. But he's like, I know in reality, like I have to go do work to make things work. Like that's just the reality, you know? And like, if you're a middle-class person, that really is a reality. Like there's no like God giving you like a pot of gold. So they're like easy to be lukewarm.
Okay.
Mm.
I think kind of what he continues to say, what he keeps going here, he says, how much goodwill do I have to do that it inclines me to a lofty and almost charitable serenity when it comes to religion, which is occasionally mingled with a slight disdain for the uncleanliness of spirit. So like, how much do I have to do to not be dirty or unclean, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what I'm saying. Like,
Right. Yeah.
like in Catholic Church, I think, is it not called penance, where you like pay money to be like absolved or whatever? You're like, here's money to the church.
I've never been to a Catholic church. I don't know, but that sounds like it's on, you know? But I mean, there's tithing too in Christianity in a sense. Like you do your 10% of every check, 10% goes to the church. That's tithing.
I was at a session, yeah, you know, they go like pass around, wait, and you just donate.
Yeah, exactly. All right. It is only
with the help of history, not through his own personal experience, therefore, that the scholar succeeds in bringing himself to a respectful seriousness and to a certain timid deference in presence of religions. But even when his sentiments have reached the stage of gratitude towards them, he has not personally advanced one step nearer to that which still remains itself as church or as a piety, perhaps even the contrary. The practical indifference to religious matters in the midst of which he has been born and brought up usually sublimates itself in his case into circumspection and cleanliness, which shuns contact with religious men and things. And it may be just the depth of his tolerance and humanity which prompts him to avoid the delicate trouble which tolerance itself brings with it.
Let's keep going. Let's finish it out. Let's unpack the whole thing.
All right. Every age has its own divine type of naivete. Every age has its own divine type of naivete, for the discovery of which other ages may envy it. And how much naivete, adorable, childlike, and boundlessly foolish naivete is involved in this belief of the scholar and his superiority, in the good conscience of his tolerance, in this unsuspecting, simple certainty which with his instinct treats that religious man as a lower and less valuable type, beyond, before, and above which he himself has developed. He, the little arrogant dwarf and mob man, the sedulously alert, head in hand drudge of ideas, of modern ideas.
Okay, that right there, Jay. So earlier when you brought us in, you said like he's gonna be like critiquing Christianity. You said something, but I think what he's critiquing is like the people who only use that as a lukewarm thing and don't understand like why they do the customs in the first place. Because like this is the way I take it. These new scholars who like they look down at religious people and they're like, we have these new ideas and that makes us above you, blah blah blah, and he at the end calls them like arrogant dwarfs, blah 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 blah. Is I think because like there is something into understanding that there's like a higher power and like you as a human will never fully understand everything. Like that's kind of one of our curses. Like we have the ability to think and ponder and create and imagine, but we don't know like for real what the truths are. Like it eludes all of us, even the smartest man. It's still like we're still trying to figure it out. It's like the puzzle we'll never figure out. And like maybe across time we get further along like the great puzzle. But if you ever a man who thinks you like figured it out, like any philosopher, he's like, and like you think it's like saying that there's no God, there's no nothing, and he's like, you're kind of a dwarf in like what you're actually like your antenna of like thinking is. You know, that's the way I took it.
Yeah, he's describing this person, the scholars at that time, who look at religious people as naive, right? And what he's saying is like, basically piggybacking off of what you said, is you might look at religious people as they're naive, but you yourself might be naive and not even know it.
Yeah. It's actually, you are naive if you think that you have figured it out.
Right.
Just that alone. He's like, that's a red flag for me. At least the religious person has accepted that they know nothing.
Right.
And they're leaning into religion to fill in the gaps, even at like the lowest level.
Mm-hmm.
But, and you can expand on that. You can learn more about nothing, but like, I think he's been like the guys who are like, I got to figure it out. I got it all figured out. He's like, that's a red flag. We know nothing.
And you're naive because of it.
So he's not calling out just Christians who think that they've figured it out, but also the people who critique Christianity. So is he also like openly just saying that he's naive? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think so in a sense, because this book is titled Beyond Good and Evil, right? But it's not, the Beyond Good and Evil doesn't mean like there's a correct and an incorrect. There's this gray zone. There's not black or white, right?
It's just the attempt of like going that direction.
Right. And so what he's saying is there's people like Christianity who believe that this is good, right? They fill in the blanks, like John said. And there's people that are on the other side of the argument that are saying this is wrong and you guys are wrong in this way. And because of that, I'm right. Those people are also wrong. So we're on two ends of a spectrum here. What he's saying is being on either end of that spectrum is naive and understanding that there's this middle ground.
And you guys agree?
And he continues later to say like religion isn't necessarily useless. There's ways that it can be used for different types of people.
And one of his like line where he's like, there's every age of like a new idea, like new naivete, like new splendor in thinking. It made me think of like, we hear slogans today and they're like, it's progressive and it's good because it's like progressive means like what? Like it's a new idea or something.
Yep. We're about
progress and we're making progress. Like, and they're like, it's this new thing and like, it's amazing. And it's like, there's always that, right? And they're like, we figured it out. I know it took humans all this time, but we actually, boys can be girls, And like, they say it with such confidence and like they're so naive. They're like, of course not, and like, you can take that in a lot of different ways,
That way of thinking also like provides the counter, which is like, you're naive for not thinking that there is like this, like other, like in this case, the example of gender, right? Like, so the gray area is where we should be seeking like new progress, like actual, or is he just saying that it's there to kind of like serve as like the middle ground for us to like ration out what is like,
well, okay.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know, like,
okay, well, one
that way of thinking and bringing,
in the context in the book, like I'm taking it as like the thought of the higher power and how people who like these academics, they like tend to dismiss it, and like just the idea of dismissing that as a whole, I think is like he like saying that's naive in itself.
I see.
And like maybe my metaphor doesn't quite correspond with this, but it was corresponding with when he was saying like every new generation, every age has its own divine type of naivete. What was it again? Naivete, for the discovery of which, so, and he's like, it's adorable, childlike, boundlessly foolish.
I agree.
So I was kind of taking that and like expanding on it, but I think in this context, he's talking about like God.
The Lord.
Well, it's interesting because like God is like kind of described in the like Bible as being like a mysterious God and you can't like know everything, right? Like he's the ultimate like.
Well, you literally can't see him. You'll die. Yeah.
I mean, Moses and Andrew went up to Mount Sinai and a cloud came over and they weren't even looking at him. You know what I mean?
But in God's like context of like the 10 Commandments, like the Old Testament was like strict, like there is naivete you don't know about, but for sure you guys need to do these things. These are hard. Yeah, these are no. This isn't. It's truly evil or
thou shalt not.
Yeah.
Thou shalt not. This is like concrete, literally carved in rock, like in stone tablets. Yeah, you cannot do this.
Yes.
Yeah. So Nietzsche continues with 59, and I'll jump in. He says, "Whoever has seen deeply into the world has doubtless divined what wisdom there is in the fact that men are superficial. It is their perspective instinct which teaches them to be flighty, lightsome, and false. Here and there, one finds a passionate and exaggerated adoration of pure forms in philosophers as well as in artists. It is not to be doubted that whoever has need of the cult, of the superficial to that extent, has at one time or another made an unlucky dive beneath it." So he's saying every once in a while, here and there, you'll find this passionate and exaggerated form of adoration of pure forms of philosophers as artists. So you'll find these like unique artists and philosophers. And it is not doubted that whoever was in that cult of the superficial has at one time or another made an unlucky dive beneath it. So they've broken out of the matrix in a sense. You'll find that these philosophers and artists broke out of the matrix in a sense and brought something brand new to the discussion.
You could say like Da Vinci's one of those guys. Like totally broke out of the matrix for his time. He was just like banger after banger in tons of different fields.
Right. I mean, you can say that about many of the pillars of Western culture. You know, Charles Darwin, Isaac Newton. You have many different people that broke out of the matrix of like the earth is flat. No, we have a spherical globe and we have gravity. Like you have very many people that are, built Western civilization. So those people. All right. Perhaps there is even an order of rank with respect to those burnt children, those born artists who find the enjoyment of life only in trying to falsify its image, as if taking wearisome revenge on it. One might guess to what degree life has distinguished them, by the extent to which they wish to see its image falsified, attenuated, ultrified, or deified. One might reckon the hominis religiosi among the artists as their highest rank.
Okay. Can I take a stab at that?
Yeah.
So is he saying there's artists that their whole like life is like trying to falsify like an idea, right? Like kind of like we're this progressive way of thinking, either right or wrong, but regardless of that, like if you said the moral side apart, like their sole existence is to like be an artist and like add nuance to something, and really that's their main goal, like and they position themselves in the highest rank for that reason.
Or there's a stratification, like the really good ones fully break out of it, but the like lesser and lesser good ones break out, but to a lesser extent. It's like,
okay.
So what do you mean? Because like,
well, like
Isaac Newton,
he fully broke out.
Well,
I mean, our evolution, the idea of man's creation, right?
True. Oh yeah. They turned an idea and totally like
completely changed it.
And not just like a thinker, like he's saying like artists too. So like, I mean, like Joe Rogan as like a comedian has totally broken the matrix. Like he is the number one podcast in the world. He has like presidents on, like that success is like,
that's great.
There's comedians that are less than him, like Tom Segura, Bert Kreischer. They like broken levels of the matrix that they have success because like they were kind of with him, but like they're not him. And then like there's other guys on the hierarchy, like Shane Gillis is going up pretty high, like that's just comedians, like artists, whatever. Like for a long time, Kanye couldn't get a record deal. Because they like wanted to just make beats. And like finally he got his break and like he became Kanye,
Okay.
Yeah. One interesting thing too, like my girlfriend's taking a class right now and it's like, it has this section of the class talking about vampires over history. Right. And what originally vampires were these like bloodthirsty creatures that would come out at nighttime and just chase you like a zombie in a sense.
Right.
But as we've progressed, they've become like,
they're like super hot and
sexual or hot, you know what I mean? So there's like this falsifying of what, vampires were in a sense, and artists have been like, what if we make them relatable? Or what if we make them sexual creatures? Or what if we make them, you know what I mean? So there's this artist.
What if we give them a 6-pack and like super like hot?
What did Jared Joseph prefer?
Exactly. Very flow 5 if anyone's wondering what we got there.
It is the
Okay. I think this should end with a banger. Like this, that's the stuff I really want to talk to, but we'll get there in a second.
I'll continue. It is the profound, suspicious fear of an incurable pessimism which compels whole centuries to fasten their teeth into a religious interpretation of existence. The fear of the instinct which divines that truth might be attained too soon, before man has become strong enough, hard enough, artist enough. Piety, the life in God, regarded in this light, would appear as the most elaborate and ultimate product of the fear of truth, as an artist adoration, an artist intoxication, and presence of the most logical of all falsifications, as the will to the inversion of truth, to untruth at any price. Perhaps there has hitherto been no more effective means of beautifying man than piety. By means of it, man can become so artful, so superficial, so iridescent, and so good that his appearance no longer offends.
Banger, really, I thought at the end. Real quick, look at the definition of piety. It's just so I got my like, but I think I know, but
Piety, the quality of being religious or reverent.
and it's like actually believing in that shit, like
Right.
like doing the works, like being like, how pious is he? That means he's like really doing that shit, right? Yeah. So like, for me, the banger was like when it's after it says like interpretation of existence, and then it has like the semicolon, and it goes like the fear of instinct, and it goes like the divines the truth. Might be attained too soon before man has become strong enough, hard enough, artist enough. And then he talks about how like beautifying man has become like so artful that it's like it becomes like the inversion of truth. And then he ends it with how piety is like the best polisher for man, to actually become strong enough, artist enough to like do things. At least that's the way I read it. I don't know.
The quality of religion, like being super religious, like fully believing it.
So like Isaac Newton was like, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go for it.
I was going to say like Isaac Newton, we use him as an example of like, he was like a pious, almost religious in his like effort to like falsify or like come up with these like new theories, right? Or no? Or am I taking this wrong?
Religion
Oh, piety though?
is to be a practice of, or the practice of being religious is piety.
Mm.
Yeah. You could also ask the question, was Isaac Newton practicing theory? Was it actual like practical things that he created? Like readable?
Right. Let's unpack that last sentence. It's like, perhaps there has hitherto been no more effective means of beautifying man than piety. By means of it, man can become so artful, so superficial, so iridescent, and so good that his appearance no longer offends. Like, what does that mean to you guys?
I think it's when I read it, what came to mind was like let go, let God. Like you almost like relinquish the ability like to have people idealize you or idolize you in a way where you've kind of relinquished this judgment of against other humans that think about you, and you've kind of just give it all to God. But that was my interpretation.
What I got was, okay, I think it's important to take into context the first part of that part that I read.
Go. Yeah, tell me. Okay.
Okay. So he says, it is profound. So suspicious fear of an incurable pessimism that compels whole centuries to fasten their teeth into a religious interpretation of existence. So there's this nihilism that underrides all of these societies over time.
Mm-hmm.
And religion has become this idea that people latch onto so that they can address this incurable pessimism.
Okay.
So they have this fear that they might be learning things too soon, that man is not strong enough, hard enough, or artist enough. And so religion has become so effective at beautifying man. It means that man can become so artful, superficial, and so iridescent and good that his appearance no longer offends. So religion, in a sense, has become this purification way for man, that they're no longer this ugly, low down sinner being. It's created this like uplifting and like cleaning up effect.
And then
Okay.
and then whole countries or like a society will see that and take it as like for face value, and over time it's only iridescent, it's only like seen as so good, and there whatever comes out of that religion is something like that can be viewed as not offensive anymore, or it's like kind of like, right, I mean there's no pessimism to it anymore. It's just like, this is what it is. It's good.
Packing more, Jay. What else you got?
So like when I think about like super conservative cultures, like when I was growing up, my grandma wouldn't let me watch Harry Potter, right? It's like, yes.
My mom wouldn't let me watch the Da Vinci Code or something because it was like anti-God or something. Yeah, but what? Right, man.
And so there's these things that are considered like offensive in that way. And religion was the answer to cleaning up those like dirty connotations, or, you know? And so in this way, like throughout history, we have these offensive behaviors, and religion was supposed to be the cure to that, to various societies over different centuries.
Mm-hmm.
Every culture at some point has adopted one, so that they aren't, they don't view themselves internally as offensive.
Mm-hmm.
What? I would say, at least in the context of how you explain it, it sounds better than the fear of truth. But can we give maybe an example of that time of what fear of truth or the offensiveness to religion would look like? Because when he's writing this,
Sex before marriage. That would be considered not pure, right? And the ideas behind it would be, you say that for your husband, you say that for your wife. Right. So that if you didn't do that, you were considered offensive. That was an offensive behavior.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason, they full believe in like when they're a pious person, that you can't do that.
And what does he mean by fear of truth? What would be something that he's like regarding as?
Well, the truth in that aspect would be that might not necessarily be the case. If you have sex before marriage, it doesn't mean that things are all fucked up,
Yeah. So I'm just thinking, like, when he wrote this, what times were like, right? Because we live in a totally different era. It's just, yeah. So he's just kind of just pondering of like what times were like for people to think of, like maybe sex wasn't it wasn't back then, like wasn't like so put on this pedestal where like everybody's free and liberated. Right?
Well, you got to remember too, the people that came to America were the people that saw Europe as too liberal.
Yeah,
and they created religion. Like, we have religious freedom because we want to practice our religions. And so Europe at the time was an extremely progressive, liberal continent.
I feel like one thing that he's unpacking here too is like he keeps touching on is like humans are always the same. Like, because everything he talks about, we could like literally like we're laying over like our current landscape of like America, but like it totally applies to like Europe at his time. It totally applies to like Rome in its time before that. That's why he referenced it a lot, like sex and like them trying to like bring discipline to it has been a constant battle since like civilization has become a thing, like it's like it's like an early form of like human discipline that like, and a lot of times it's like very normal that like society like would be like more liberal with sex and like what that relationship looks like. And then there's like, also we go through eras where like, we're very conservative with like how that works in our society, So I feel like any idea about like that is like, it's always like on a loop, like right now we're going through like a loop of like the 70s were like the start of like the loop of like being more progressive about sex in America, and like now we're like we're at the peak of like being liberal with sex with like, we have like, I mean, I like,
yeah, I wouldn't need examples. We don't have to get into it here. We've are.
No, well, we're
definitely at the peak, though. I don't see it getting much darker.
and I see that the knob is now going down the thing, you know? We're like, people are like, actually, we're kind of done, you know? So, it's always going through cycles.
Quick question is, was the church, I don't know, was the church always held higher than the emperors or kings during?
No, my gosh.
No?
No, for sure not. Like,
Not in Roman history. The king, the emperor was the guy. But once kind of Rome started falling apart, Catholicism as a whole was kind of beholden to religion, hope, and that whole hierarchy system.
the church would help, like, towards like the collapse of the Roman Empire. They would definitely weigh in on who would be like the new rulers, and they'd be backed by the church, but like they were never like, this is the power. You know, they kind of had more like a shadow power, you know?
Right.
Because they had like a populace that like followed the church. So you needed the church behind you, but it's not like they were like the forward facing decision maker, more like a back, like a behind the scenes maybe, but never forward. Emperor
Church was
and then before that, like
System.
before monotheism, any sort of monotheism, religion was so polytheistic that like the church would never be consolidated enough to have enough power to do anything like that. That's like what Christianity was like. Its biggest threat is like its monotheism, is that like everyone believes in one thing, where before like 1,000 people could believe in 1,000 different things. Like everyone was cool with that.
Right.
and so that term "fear of truth" kind of always existed in a way.
It still does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when we talk about it, we mean like Christian or like
Belief system.
Judeo-Christian in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, to circle back, like what is the truth? Like, is God real? Question mark. You know, like
Right. In the Arab world, it's completely different. The church is number one. You know what I'm saying? Like they all fall under that. But as far as we can speak on Christianity or like Judeo-Christian, the church was kind of a separate entity. When they exercised their power at certain points, like when you think about America developing, Pennsylvania was like a religious state, and they made rules based on their religious beliefs. But as we progress, we can see that things, okay, now church maybe not be so high. Now it's kind of like autonomy. And so now people make laws differently. But at different points in time, the church was higher in the hierarchy than state itself.
for sure, 100%, 100%. And I mean, like the Vatican is its own country within, you know,
It has its own land and everything.
and it is just the church.
Right. All right. 60? Well, yeah, I got this one. I'll read it now.
Fine, that's fine. You read the next one.
Yeah.
To love mankind for God's sake. This has so far been the noblest and remotest sentiment to which mankind has attained. That love to mankind without any redeeming intention in the background is only an additional folly and brutishness that the inclination to this love has first to get its proportion, its delicacy, its gram of salt, and sprinkling of ambergris from a higher inclination. Whoever first perceived and experienced this, however his tongue may have stammered as it attempted to express such a delicate matter, let him for all time be holy and respected, as the man who has so far flown highest and gone astray in the finest fashion. This one was kind of hard to be understanding.
Oh yeah.
So the overarching idea,
To love mankind for God's sake. That's the overarching idea, right? So that virtue, like that we accept us, men, like our fellow people, for God's sake. Like that's a virtue that's like actually worth its gram of salt. You know?
Yeah, I can see that, because then he continues on to what I hear is when he says redeeming intention, to make sure that's not in the background of why you're doing the love of mankind, like duties. Like if you're going to love your fellow man, don't have anything to redeem in the future. Like you gave something, so now you're expecting something in return. Like that should be, you could just be in all favor of love of mankind.
Neighbor love.
I'm getting something different.
Okay.
Also, it says, to love mankind for God's sake. This has so far been the noblest and remotest sentiment to which mankind has attained. So like in culture, it's viewed as like, this is like the epitome.
Yes.
But he's saying that love to mankind without any redeeming intention in the background is only additional folly and brutishness. So folly is a mistake. And brutal, which is like, it's not intelligent in a sense. So he's saying that type of love is folly. That the inclination to this love has first to get its proportion, its delicacy, its gram of salt, and sprinkling of ambergris from a higher inclination. So this type of love is rare. It's like you're putting a little salt on something. Like, when you experience it, it's supposed to just be as like an addition to.
Okay, and this is my take on it too. And the way he ends it, it's like, let him for all time be holy and respected as the man who has so far flown highest and gone astray in the finest fashion. To me, when I read that, it reminds me of the story of Icarus, the guy who flew too close to the sun and he melted his wings and then he died. Like, I still think, like, I agree that what you're saying, like, he is taking a stab at it. Like, me as just the reader, I'm still reading, like, to me still, like, even if he did fly too close to the sun and he was led astray after, the idea I still think is like still a good idea, and it's a good piece of salt to throw on my food. That like,
right, yeah. I mean, that's what he's saying, right? He says like, whoever has experienced this, well, he may have stammered into it or attempted to express it in such delicate manner. Let him be respected. So a person that's actually experienced this type of love, let them be respected and regarded as the man that flew the highest and has gone astray in the finest fashion.
Yeah. So when I read that, I was like, and like, again, he kind of leads you to believe that like he flew that high and then he disappeared from there, because like you can't actually forever love all mankind because like, I mean, tons of things happen, there could be circumstances where you could actually hate a fellow human and like maybe rightfully so, right? But like the perfect idea of a Christian is to be like, you should forgive him because he's also has God within him, And so like, but if you can ever like get that feeling and like, and I think he respects like what the guy aimed at in the first place, but it's foolish to aim at it, is maybe what he's saying.
Yeah, that love is truly special. Like I hope everybody here has experienced that. Like my mom, my grandma, like there's people that are like
motherly love is like almost
it's that, and so like, let that person be regarded as like, you've experienced it to the finest fashion. You've flown the highest. Like that's a beautiful thing you get.
If you find it outside of family with any sort of relationship, you're kind of like friend or partner. Like, I think that's something that's special. It's like, just kind of like, hey, I had it once and it felt really good. Now I have like a standard to live for, like, you know what I mean? Something to aim at.
And even if that is like part of your paradigm of how like you're like thinking of things, even if it's not like perfectly true and sound, it is still a nice piece of salt to have on your meal to make it taste good,
That tabling salt you put on top of it.
It's a, what, dude, for my fellow man, for my fellow brother, like, and like sometimes you make a wrong decision, like me giving that homeless woman $30. I saw her this weekend. She was doing the same con. And I was like, I remember you. I'm not giving you $30 for the cab this time. But I gave her $30 for the cab last time because I was like, it might be a scam, but I would hate to leave my fellow man in like in a situation where they needed help and I could have helped them and I didn't,
Right.
And like, I got scammed for like my naivete of trying to help my fellow man, but it still tasted good knowing that I made the right decision, that like for my conscience, and then when I saw her again, I fucking knew, so fucking.
I've been giving you my goddamn money. All right, everybody.
61?
Sure.
All right.
61.
All right. The philosophers, as we free spirits understand him, as the man of the greatest responsibility who has the conscience for the general development of mankind, will use religion for his discipling and educating work, just as he will use the contemporary political and economic conditions, the selecting and disciplining influence, destructive as well as creative and fashioning, which can be exercised by means of religious and manifold and varied, according to the sort of people placed under its spell and protection. Should I keep going or should we stop?
Keep going. let's unpack a little bit. So the philosopher is going to use religion for his disciplining and educating work, just as he will use the politics and economic conditions. So the philosopher is, these free thinkers are going to be using religion and the political and economic climate. But they're not going to completely disregard religion. They're actually going to use it to benefit their cause.
Yeah, to me, when I read it, like in my mind, I thought of like a philosopher as someone like working out in a gym, and these different like categories are different things they're strong at, and like
Right.
to be a good philosopher, you have to understand like the climate of like your social, economical like place you're living at. You have to know when to like use religion as a strength, because it like consolidates people. So like you would be naive to disregard all those things and just think in a vacuum, like a real philosopher.
Yeah, I mean, think about Jordan Peterson. His first, like the thing that really got him to blow up, he talked about maybe social and some social things with like the trans thing, right? And then he jumped into a little bit of the economics, talking about what's going on. And then he jumped into religion and now has a whole book about it. So like he knows how to use
True.
all of these things.
True.
As a
real philosopher, really. Okay. For those who are strong and independent, destined and trained to command, in whom the judgment and skill of a ruling race is incorporated, religion is an additional means for overcoming resistance in the exercise of authority. As a bond which binds rulers and subjects in common, betraying and surrendering to the former the conscience of the latter, their innermost heart, which would fain escape obedience, and in the case of unique natures of noble origin, if by virtue of superior spirituality they should incline to a more retired and contemplative life, reserving to themselves only the most refined forms of government. Overchosen disciples or members of an order, religion itself may be used as a means for obtaining peace from the noise and trouble of managing grosser affairs and for securing immunity from the unavoidable filth of all political agitation.
And so the people that are destined and trained to command, those that are strong and independent, use religion as an additional means for overcoming resistance in the exercise of authority. So for that person, they use religion as like a tool.
It reminds me of Viktor Frankl, like how he used the religion to kind of put his mind outside of the authoritative existence his body was currently in, the situation he was currently in. That's kind of
he used purpose, logotherapy. He used purpose. He had to have a reason for getting through this. And this whole thing was reason, and it was like, what am I going to do after this? Was this thing? So he found purpose, and because of that, he could exist in Auschwitz.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I wouldn't necessarily classify that to religion. I don't think he used religion in that sense, but I could think like Rome using Christianity.
Yeah, I mean, they say Constitution. Maybe it started off as a minority thing for sure. They might have won it, or a lot of people say like maybe Constantine was a true believer, but maybe he saw the power in Christianity and used it as a tool because like now he gets to say the one true God chose me, Constantine, to rule over the one true empire, and I'm the one true king chosen by God. So his authority came from God, which was like a very nice tool to use at the time, because before no other like the first ever king of Rome was crowned king from like Jupiter himself, crowning us. So like it's a thing that the people have been using since the test of time, before Christianity too. The Greeks came from Zeus. The Greeks came from Zeus, like the divine. Yeah, the divine.
And it was in France too, where the king was appointed by a divine, like a god as well, right? So it's a way for people to exercise authority without having resistance.
Kim Jong-un's literally like a god, like supreme. He's supreme leader, like he's a demigod living on Earth. He doesn't poop.
Right. All right. And we're about to jump into what in India was called the Brahmins, which is this royal hired class in India.
The Brahmins.
Yeah. So go ahead.
The Brahmins, for instance, understood this fact. With the help of religious organization, they secured to themselves the power of nominating kings for the people, while their sentiments prompted them to keep apart and outside as men with a higher and super regal mission. At the same time,
That's an example. So that's one version. So we're going to jump into another version here.
at the same time, religion gives inducement and I don't know if I said that right. Inducement and opportunity to some of the subjects to qualify themselves for the future ruling and commanding the slowly ascending ranks and classes, in which, though fortunate marriage customs, volatile power, and delight in self-control are on the increase. To them, religion offers sufficient incentives and temptations to aspire to higher intellectuality and to experience the sentiments of authoritative self-control, of silence, and of solitude.
So so that's asceticism. So this is another version. So the religion can also, at the same time as for one person, be an exercise of authority. This can also give to another person inducement and opportunity to some of the same subjects to qualify themselves for future ruling and commanding and slowly ascending the ranks and classes. So they're not quite the people that exercise the authority, but that are people that can use it to eventually exercise authority.
For sure. I mean, he talks about like the marriages and stuff. Up until even still now recently, all the way back to like you would have political marriages to like align power. And then like that's a family chosen by God, you know?
Like Egyptian families, like marrying within each other, or like English kings and queens, right? They all kind of traded each other. Like only the royals mess with royals. So to these people, religion offers sufficient incentive and temptation.
For sure.
It aspires them to higher intellectuality, and to experience the sentiments of authoritative self-control and of silence and of solitude. So they get to experience these higher levels of religion, like an exercise authority.
Yeah, like actually, like they look at religion as like a thing to train on, and in that they train sufficiently on, it will help them on their like will to power. Pretty much is like what he's saying, which is like, and they see religion as like a good conduit to help get them where they want to go. You know?
Right. So this next sentence is the final part of this second class of people that use religion. So just finish that, and then we'll discuss that real quick.
It's asceticism,
Asceticism,
and Puritanism are almost indispensable means of educating and ennobling a race, which seeks to rise above its hereditary baseness and work itself upwards to the future supremacy. And finally, to ordinary men, to the majority of the people who exist for service and general utility, and are only so far entitled to exist, religion gives invaluable contentness with their lot and condition, peace of heart, ennoblement of obedience, additional social happiness and sympathy, with something of transfiguration and embellishment, something of justification for all commonplaceness, and all the means, all the semi-annual poverty of their souls. Religion, together with the religious significance of life, sheds sunshine over such perpetuity, harass men, and makes even their own aspect endurable to them. It operates upon them as the Epicurean philosophy usually operates upon sufferers of higher order in a refreshing and refining manner, almost turning suffering to account, and in the end, even hollowing and vindicating it. Finish it or keep going? Okay.
So to the ordinary man, religion gives contentness with their condition. It provides peace of heart. It provides ennoblement. So you're become nobility for being obedient.
Social happiness.
It's social happiness and sympathy, and you get this transfiguration and embellishment. So you get changed and you become more
something, and justification.
Right. And so all the poverty and all the meanness, it shines sunshine on it, right? So it becomes this new lens through which people look at you and the way you look at the world.
Yes.
So it makes life endurable, and it operates on them similar to an Epicurean philosophy. So I'm not super familiar with that. But it actually takes all that stuff and becomes hollowing and vindicating it. So it vindicates your struggle and your suffering, and it becomes hallowed. So like it's now valued.
Well, I don't know. Okay, well, let's finish the thing and then we'll talk more.
Okay.
There is perhaps nothing so admirable in Christianity and Buddhism as their art of teaching even the lowest to elevate themselves by piety to a seemingly higher order of things, and thereby to retain their satisfaction with an actual world in which they find it difficult enough to live, this very difficult being necessary. That ending, just to go off what you were saying earlier about how it's hollowing and vindicating, I think then at the same time, he says like, at the same time, Christianity and Buddhism, like, to me, like, it's like he's giving them their roses that like, one of the reasons why the whole world learned how to read and write is because of Christianity. The church actually taught people how to read and write because they thought it would be valuable for people to be smart enough to learn God's word themselves. They said like, it kind of makes no sense that you get God's word from a king, even if that king's within a church, like a pope or a priest or whatever. So like only people with class who were using religion as a conduit to help make them go higher up, only they were like educated enough to actually read books and do stuff. And then like as religion got bigger, they're the ones who perpetuated like educating the entire world as we know it pretty much, you know. And Buddhism has like similar traits as Christianity where like you're supposed to help people. Like women reading is like a Christian virtue, you know, like being smart enough to read, like educating a woman, that's like a Christian virtue. So I think he's like, hey, that's perhaps like, there's nothing so admirable. Like they're willing to teach people. So they're then better able to aim themselves and be pious, because like, even if life is very unbearable, what she's like acknowledging, if you can learn to aim yourself and be pious, it will become endurable, you know, or like you can endure this. And at the very least, there's something very valuable in that teaching. And like, I think he's been like, and if the atheist can acknowledge that like, this is a value that like religion brings to people, then they don't understand the full scope of like what we're talking about, because like, that's a real thing.
Yeah. I mean, he's not like just poking at Christianity. He's poking at the other side. Like if you can't see how admirable this is, then you're not looking, you know?
Yeah.
So he's like on both sides. Like it's not either one. It's in the middle.
Yeah, like,
where nothing.
Yeah, I think he's like giving them the roses on this. He's like, if you follow too far, it's hollowing and vindicating, because you're like, I didn't do all this stuff because I'll save myself for the Lord, you know, or whatever, you know. But he was like, on the flip side, they have done so much good. So like, we got to give them credit when credit's due.
Right. All right. Anything else you guys have to add on that? No? All right, I'll jump into 62. To be sure, to make also the bad counter reckoning against such religions, and to bring to light their secret dangers. The cost is always excessive and terrible when religions do not operate as an educational and disciplinary medium in the hands of the philosopher, but rule voluntarily and paramountly when they wish to be the final end, and not a means along with other means. Among men, as among all other animals, there is a surplus of defective, diseased, degenerating, infirm, and necessarily suffering individuals. The successful cases, among men also, are always the exception, and in view of the fact that man is the animal not yet properly adapted to his environment, the rare exception. So we all hear about this high value man, right?
Okay.
So what he's saying in all animals of the animal kingdom, there's this surplus. So there's a majority of people that are defective, diseased, degenerating, infirm, and necessarily suffering.
Yeah, not every animal's top dog. It couldn't work, but someone's got to be top dog. Yeah.
Right. But the successful cases, the number one lobster, if you guys remember in Jordan Peterson's thing, they are the exception, and they're a rare exception.
Foil card, super rare.
Right, exactly. But worse still, the higher the type a man represents, the greater is the improbability that he will succeed. The accidental, go ahead.
So I thought about that. Okay. Why is he saying like a man higher? So like he's got more potential, let's say. Okay.
Okay.
Why does he have a higher probability of not succeeding? That's what he's stating?
Yeah. So
Why?
how many Jeff Bezos are there in the world?
Well, I thought about this. Okay. I understand what you're saying. You mean like achieving to the highest level?
Is less and less of a chance. Like the 1%, you're looking at the bell curve, right?
Okay. Well, what I was thinking.
I mean, that 99th percentile is a lot lower.
Okay. Okay. Well, when I first thought about it, it just made me think of like sometimes people who are so smart overthink things so much and then they don't actually do anything, you know? Like Walter White's a good example of that in Breaking Bad. He's like a super genius who underachieved his whole time. And that's why he became Heisenberg at the end. You know, he started gray matter, but underachieved because of like so many reasons.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I can see that too. All right, I'll continue. The accidental, the law of irrationality in the general constitution of mankind manifests itself most terribly in its destructive effect on the higher orders of men, the conditions of whose lives are delicate, diverse, and difficult to determine. What, then, is the attitude of the two greatest religions above mentioned to the surplus of failures in life? So Buddhism and Christianity. They endeavor to preserve and keep alive whatever can be preserved. In fact, as the religions for sufferers, they take the part of these upon principle. They are always in favor of those who suffer from life as from a disease, and they would fain treat every other experience of life as false and impossible. So Buddhism and Christianity are the religions for sufferers.
Yeah, I agree.
They always favor those who suffer from life as from disease. So like taking care of the widow, right? They always put the highest priority on those who suffer.
Well, you could take it to like the origin of Christianity and Buddhism, and like, is that we are bound to suffer forever.
Right.
The origin of like Genesis is that, I mean, we ate the apple, we got kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and like we were cursed to suffer forever. Right. Buddhism, he's like, hey, the origin of all of our suffering is craving. So like their whole paradigm, both religions, their paradigm is that like humans are cursed to suffer.
Right.
Number one.
Yeah. All right. I'll continue. However highly we may esteem this indulgent and preservative care, inasmuch as in applying to others, it has applied and applies also to the highest and usually the most suffering type of man. The hitherto paramount religions, to give a general appreciation of them, are among the principal causes which have kept the type of man upon a lower level. They have preserved too much that which should have perished. So like natural selection is what he's saying. Because of religion, the people that were supposed to die off, the people that we were supposed to forget, they've been preserved and now they're still here.
I thought that was interesting.
Right. So one has to thank them for invaluable services, and who is sufficiently rich in gratitude not to feel poor at the contemplation of all that the spiritual men of Christianity have done for Europe hitherto. For when they had given comfort to the sufferers, courage to the oppressed and despairing, a staff and support to the helpless, and when they had allured from society into convents and spiritual penitentiaries the broken-hearted and distracted, what else had they to do in order to work systematically in that fashion, and with a good conscience, for the preservation of all the sick and suffering, which means, in deed and in truth, to work for the deterioration of the European race.
Real quick, read the next line and then pause right there. Actually, read into the exclamation point, and then I would love to talk about it just. Sorry.
Let me find where that is. Exclamation point?
Yeah, it ends at do. So like you're gonna read like literally like one more sentence.
Okay. To reverse all estimates of value, that is what they had to do.
Okay. So he's talking about one, he starts us off with like all the good things they did. Okay. And then he talks about like how like by them saving everybody, it kind of made a space where at this point in time, all like he's saying like the weak and like disease or people are now going to deteriorate the European race. And like, I guess what I was thinking is that like for Europe to get to that point in time, it had to overcome tons of obstacles, like tons of wars, different empires owning Europe then overthrowing like the empire, becoming like nation states, becoming countries. And so like for real, only the strong could survive, you know? And like because the strong survived eventually, they built up a space. When Christianity took root, it allowed space for like the weak or whatever. And all the brokenhearted, all the weak, all like the helpless, they now are the majority of the population instead of like what the strong people were, you know? And then like if they're voting on all the rules and stuff, well, like that's a society of like all going downhill, you know? And like now that the strong people can't even right the ship because they're outnumbered. I don't know. Could be a wrong take.
Yeah, I mean, if these are the people that religious culture props up as like the people that should be valued, now we see this deterioration of people in culture as a whole in Europe. And I'll continue because what that is a reversal. What he's saying here is the reversal of all estimates of value. That's what does it.
Yeah.
And to shatter the strong, to spoil great hopes, to cast suspicion on the delight and beauty, to break down everything autonomous, manly, conquering, imperious, all instincts which are natural to the highest and most successful type of man, into uncertainty, distress of conscience, and self-destruction, forsooth, to invert all love of the earthly and of supremacy over the earth, into hatred of the earth and earthly things. That is the task the church imposed on itself, and was obliged to impose, until, according to its standard of value, unworldliness, unsensuousness, and higher man fused into one sentiment.
I mean, bingo, like right there, like, I mean, you could say that has been happening in our own country today at this time. You know, like we're teaching young boys to like not be manly, not like follow your natural instincts, to be like a feminine, like neutral person that like listens and follows the rules, you know, to go like against your instinct. Like, so like, look how far the inversion of values has gone. Like we were a country that like we were willing to literally stand for anything that went against our principles, to a country where like we're supposed to be suffocating all instinctual values, you know, for the sake of the weak.
The religion of wokeness has created that.
Yeah, they're the new victims of society, you know? So like their values of this minority is being like cascaded down to all of us, and we need to like bend the knee to this thing. So like just like COVID's a perfect example. For someone's grandma's safety, I have to stay home.
Right.
Because if I would leave my house, someone's grandma would die. If I didn't get the shot, I was putting someone else in danger. And because of that, everyone allow the government to take away my freedom because they said so, you know? It's like the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, we're literally seeing it today.
He says that is the task.
And I didn't do none of that shit, bro. Fuck that.
The task the church imposed on itself, and it was obliged to impose. Is he saying like I know we referenced I don't know it off the top of my head, like cherish the meek, or
the meek shall inherit the earth is in the Bible.
Is he saying that the people that are diseased, sick, suffering, that like the ruling of the church allowed people like that to bypass natural selection, which causes society to degenerate over time, which
is what Europe is at that time now.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting off like you, and he's gonna say that's happening now. Yeah,
well, and it's happening now. So what he's saying is the deterioration of Europe at that time was the cause of religion. or what part of religious, the European degeneration was religion. And what, go ahead, John.
And like right now in Europe, like maybe it's a different thing, but it's the same play. Like Europe's gotten to a point where these virtues of really only certain people is that like these people need more help than you. So because of that, I need you to actually accept less for the sake of them. So like British people, Irish people that have been there for thousands of years, they need to pay more taxes and they need to accept that like people from other countries are going to like be taking things that are rightfully the British people, not the people from another country because they haven't paid into it. But they need to because they're the weak. They're the meagerless.
We could pay all our money to Ukraine.
Well, the difference between the church imposing it to help people in need versus like a situation like this in Europe, like what would be the difference of like understanding, okay, these people are meek, but it's not our responsibility to take care of people that like we should.
No, there is no difference in this case. Because what we're doing is we're looking over weak people that society has deemed weak or culture has deemed weak. Okay. So the widow, right? She lost her husband. That person needs to be taken care of by the church, right? So we look at our people that need help and we place them at higher priority. As a culture now, what we're seeing is like, okay, let's say trans kids, or let's say women, or oppressed classes like Black folks or whatever. Now they're the people that need to be taken care of. And as a culture, what we're going to do is we're going to prioritize them because that's our new religion. Mm-hmm. And so because it's this idea of intersectionality, like, you know, that drawing where it's like, there's people that are the oppressed and the people that are the oppressors. And if you have more of these oppressed classes within your own like identity, you're considered more meek in this sense of we're going to use the same kind of terminology. And now you're the victims of society. We place you at higher priority.
I get where this is Nietzsche now kind of stating this could be the downfall of the church at always. Or
well, you're saying that he's saying that this is already the downfall of Europe, which we're literally currently seeing live stream. Whereas the different version of the same car accident that he saw coming, it's like the same car accident, but we're watching just the modern day one.
Right.
Of that, he's like, hey, I get it. Like, Christianity has a lot of good stuff, but because of this is the repercussions that I see coming. And it's not just Christianity, like he's saying the church, because I also think that like church as a whole encourages their people, their members to be more obedient and weak, and the power to be like consolidated with one guy. And that one guy has a lot of power, the church, the guy who runs that church. But everyone else is supposed to be kind of more like, yes, sir, you know? And like, so like, I think that's why he's saying like the church, like this is what the church chose, because he referenced like the Orthodox and stuff a lot. And like, that's kind of how they were. Like, you're supposed to be a good follower unless you're like a deacon or whatever, you know?
Okay, I'll continue. If one could observe the strangely painful, equally coarse and refined comedy of European Christianity with a derisive and impartial eye of the Epicurean God, I should think one would never cease marveling and laughing. Does it not actually seem that some single will has ruled over Europe for 18 centuries in order to make a sublime abortion of man? He, however, who, with opposite requirements, no longer Epicurean, and with some divine hammer in his hand, could approach this almost voluntary degeneration and stunting of mankind, as exemplified in the European Christian, Pascal, for instance. Would he not have to cry aloud with rage, pity, and horror, "O you bunglers, presumptuous, pitiful bunglers, what have you done? Was that a work for your hands? How you have hacked and botched my finest stone. What have you presumed to do? I should say that Christianity has hitherto been the most pretentious of presumptions."
And so real quick, I have a question. Why do you think he never takes a shot at Judaism? Is Nietzsche a Jew?
He appreciates the Old Testament.
I know. I'm just curious.
He doesn't like Christianity.
Because Christianity is the predominant religion at the time. Judaism isn't.
Okay. Well, I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
They've been around since the beginning. Just funny how he never touches on them.
But like, remember he's saying that he like adores that in a sense because there's rules, they're strict, they're by the book.
He does that.
And
He only does that by passing. He just calls it the Old Testament. He doesn't
Right.
like Judaism,
but
just
Christianity gives this flexibility, and it's created this. Yeah,
I understand his digs with Christianity. I'm just I just was wondering. That's all. Someone Google, is Nietzsche Jewish?
look at his last name. Ain't no way, bro.
You think Germans were Jewish? What are you talking about?
Bro, they were, but it was like Rosenstein, Goldenberg,
Yeah, that's true. That's what you mean. Yeah,
Rubinstein. You know what I'm saying? All right,
that's true.
men,
That's true.
not great enough nor hard enough to be entitled as artists to take part in fashioning man.
Hard man. Hard man.
Men, not sufficiently strong enough and far-sighted to allow, with sublime self-constraint, the obvious law of the thousandfold failures and perishings to prevail. Men, not sufficiently noble to see the radically different grades of rank and intervals of rank that separate man from man. Such men, with their equality before God, have hitherto swayed the destiny of Europe, until at last a dwarfed, almost ludicrous species has been produced, a gregarious animal, something obliging, sickly, mediocre, the European of the present day.
Let me unpack that right there. Let me unpack that right there. Because this got me really thinking. I was like, he's so ahead of his time. Because, like, okay, the pan modern day part of this about, like, England at one point controlled majority of the world. Okay?
Mhm.
There was a point where, like, the maps used to show, they would color things in pink that were the English territories, and it was gosh darn the entire fucking world. Okay?
Right.
In like 300 years time, 250 years time, English people are not allowed to be proud to be English. They think that, like, it's a sin of what they've done.
Right.
They think that they have to make, like, reparations to people for, like, their past sins, all because of, like, this narrowness version of, like, virtue that they have been prescribed to over a long period of time. And, like, it's a sin now socially to be a proud white British person. Sad, really sad if you think about it. Like, why would they let them do that to themselves?
Yeah, because now when I picture an English person, I don't picture like a fucking red coat taking over the world. I picture like a fucking,
hey, little bitch, bro. You think of a bitch. You literally think of a bitch. They haven't been able to be proud in a very long time. But, like, they used to run the world not too long ago. If you think about it,
Right.
and, like, not too long ago. Like, we're swaying back, but, like, just recently, it was almost bad to be patriotic. That people would think you're racist and you had an American flag at your house.
Yeah.
It's like, baby, we're America. I'm so proud that, like I was born part of the best country in the world. My ancestors are part of the best country in the world. We will literally, and we've proven it, we'll fight anybody in the world and we'll win over, like, who's the best for our principles. Like, that's some propaganda that I bought into. And I think that, like, maybe some of it's bad, but I think a lot of it is good. And I can see that they were trying to take that away from me. And they were saying, actually, for the betterment good of society, we're going to bring in a bunch of illegals and you need to be less than, so their less than can be closer to your less than, because it's easier to make everyone less than make everyone more, So, like, they level the playing field for equality is what the word is, So I felt that.
Yeah, I think that was well said. Quick question. If you guys, because I know we reference this a lot, we always say this, like we currently got to experience the COVID and the whole, like, gender and trying to mix men with women with men, not really that way around, but more of men with women. Like, are we on, we could be very subjective on this question, but, like, are we on that path of kind of the deterioration of our, like, societal standard at which, like, the patriotic American where we come from? Or is it sort of like is it restabilizing, and we'll kind of find the path forward, because we are approaching, I hear this all the time now, we're approaching that 250-year mark, and that's just the average lifespan of like a nation or empire.
I think we're always in flux. I would say like we're back now leaning towards like America is great again, and that you're allowed to say it. And like we're showing that with like our geopolitical stance, with how like our vice president and president is addressing the rest of the world, and how we're trying to lead the rest of the world in like technology and commerce, and how we're taking like a firm stance in like leadership right now. Where before we were taking kind of a back step, and we were like getting our cues from the World Economic Forum and stuff like that, which is like, how do we work together? Where America's taking a stance of like, we're actually going to lead because we're the best. So like for us, I think it's like always in flux. I think we were just on the path of mass deterioration of like American traditional principles and values. And I think that because that was threatened so aggressively, we're back on a different path of trying to consolidate what is American values and principles.
It's insane how aggressive it was.
Yeah,
it still is. And what's crazy is behind the scenes, it's still brewing. You know what I mean?
100%.
I mean, England, you are going to jail now. Do you guys know what's happening with Apple, with the whole UK Apple thing? It's crazy. But okay,
Okay, we pretty much wrapped up.
No, he's still not.
Okay. Well, as you guys probably know, like people are being jailed now for online tweets, and they're saying in Germany and in England that like actually hate speech online is actually more dangerous than hate speech in person because they can live online longer. Blah blah blah. So like they're jailing people for years for like online hate speech. Like what's hate speech exactly? But anyway, so one thing that Apple's been real good about, because they're an American company and they have these values, is that like any user that uses their phone signs a contract with them, and they're saying that like your information is only shared with Apple, and we will never share your information with anybody else, even the government. And like prior to this, many times our CIA, our FBI has gone to Apple seeking a backdoor access to, let's say, terrorist phones. And Apple has taken a lot of flack for this, saying no, because it's a slippery slope. Because like if we say yes for this terrorist, what's to stop you from later redefining terrorists and now a new group of people is considered terrorists, and we've already shown to you that we're willing to do this. So for a very long time, they've always hardlined no backdoor access. Anyway, Apple's got this new high encrypted cloud that they're servicing, where like it's even harder to access your information. And the UK said, if you don't give us backdoor access to the thing, that like you're not going to be able to have like your product here. So Apple pulled their whole encrypted cloud service, and I think they caved, and they're going to give England backdoor access to everyone's phone in England, which is like it's like Orwellian. So like now, if you look up anything that's like anti-information, disinformation, if you're saying anything online, like they have backdoor access, they can see everything, and like it's dunsies. Like the only reason to do that is to weaponize it, and they're already weaponizing what power they already have.
Mm-hmm. So the deterioration is still present today.
Yeah, dude, what scares me is like, I know we have that stabilizing factor, like the new administration, the new appointees, and people that are coming into office to take control of shit. But what like really boils my fucking like blood now is like, we only got 4 years, and if this shit doesn't change with it, maybe we'll have longer. Like we don't know the future, but it's
Bro, JD Vance, the way things are going, the way he's handling business, typically VP is a meaningless job. We saw that with Kamala. JD Vance goes all around the world, gives banger speeches. Like he's talking about AI and how America's going to lead AI, how America's going to lead crypto, and he's actually like knows his nuts and bolts for a vice president pretty well, you know? And I think like if Doge does what it's supposed to, and Americans are going to get this fucking dividend for government saving, JD Vance is going to be walking a golden path to presidency, because like he has been part of the most productive team that America's seen in like probably close to 100 years, you know? So like we're going to be hungry for more of the same. And like, I think he's been doing a good job. Like when he first came on, I did not know him. I was subject to the propaganda everyone else saw, that he's like a weirdo or whatever. And the more I see of him, the more I'm like, actually might be a solid candidate, you know? So
feeling of it is a little scary.
Hear you, the only like we only have 4 years to get shit done. I hear you, but I'm hopeful that we're building a foundation for a longer term vision that people
just like, it feels as if like COVID happened, and it feels like it's almost like like, I know you talk about it, John, a lot. Like, it's almost like it's still alive in our conversations. But how many people in the next 4 years will fucking forget that actually took place?
not, dude. Look, the government's about to go. Like, Doge is about to start. Like, the PPE loans are next. Okay, the COVID PPE loans. We're gonna find out for sure what all this funny business is about. What Anthony Fauci had to do with the Wuhan lab. How much government spending was involved. Like, we haven't gotten there yet. We're so early in the presidency, but it's coming because COVID fucked Trump too. You know, like, in his presidency. I think it was kind of a planned thing. I think people would love to forget it because, like, the tool's no longer useful, and they know that they went so far past the line. That's why Biden pre-pardoned people, because, like, what they did was so heinous, so criminal, that, like, they know that they can never present it and walk away with it when all the truth is unpacked. You know,
To make me like feel like solid about our administration we have now is a multitude of things, but the number one thing is to fucking hold these people to the stake that did this to, like, families and, like, shutting people, like, getting people fired, or like, I feel like there needs to be a serious accountability.
lost their jobs and no one cared. These federal workers are getting fired from a cushy job all because they won't return to the office. And I'm seeing newspaper article about it. I didn't see any newspaper articles about local hometown guy loses business because he has to be shut down for 2 months. I never saw nothing about that. And that was a big thing that happened all across middle America. We lost a huge percentage of our fucking small owner businesses in America, which used to be the backbone of America, you know? So yeah, I want to hold these people accountable too.
Yeah, I would be like, we're on the path and we're fucking back. Like, I believe that we're back now, but
I think it's coming, bro. I think it's coming. PPE loans are next, and that's the first of many things that's going to go down the COVID rabbit hole with I think.
4 years since all this crazy shit's happened, but it feels like a lifetime. It feels like a long time.
People forgot, like, I didn't forget, but people forget, like, dude, look, they try taking everything away from us because someone else was scared, you know, and everyone else was like, just go along with the program. I just can't believe it, you know, go along with the program. What is that like? Because is a bad reason, bro.
Yeah, I'll take us out. Guys, with that, the deterioration is still around. Keep that in mind. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode. That wraps up Chapter 3 of Beyond Good and Evil by Friedrich Nietzsche, titled The Religious Mood. It brought about a lot of good discussions and challenged a lot of, beliefs that we have. And it's good to, like, question those things just to, like, bolster or just highlight some, deficiencies that we might have in our belief system. So it was a really good chapter. We hope you enjoyed it. Drop a comment down below for your favorite part of the chapter, what you think. Like the video, subscribe, drop a comment down below, follow us on all our social media platforms, and we will see you guys in the next episode. And don't forget, who you are now equals who you'll be tomorrow. Peace.